What I'm amazed by, and I noticed in all of the Twitter, which is kind of blowing up today, is the number of people here, and I think Alice said it best, that we can all learn from. And it's not just the motivational discussions, and it's not just the hype and the energy and the enthusiasm and all the things that go on when we're networking with each other. But Gerhardt has a way of collecting really smart people to sit in a room and convening an audience, and the people at every table that we can learn from each other and learn about best practices. And that's why for the last 7 or 8 years, I've been coming to Sales 2.0 and really enjoy the group of people that get convened for this discussion, because they're really smart people. So let's spend a couple of minutes talking about, on this topic, why we're here. And let's just picture this as the virtual doormat in front of the front door to your company. And it doesn't look like the same doormat that might have existed 10 or 15 years ago today, because today, customers can come to you in more ways than ever before. Is that fair to say? And they can come to you how they choose to come to you, regardless of how you choose to sell to them. And if you walked away with one thing to think about, regardless of any other points in the next 28 minutes, it's the difference between how customers choose to buy compared to how you choose to sell. And in most companies, there's a really large gap between how your customers want to buy from you and how they want to buy, period, compared to how you choose to sit inside your company and decide how you're going to go sell. And the customers are showing us some very different things. This last year in our research, the number of buying influences in every complex B2B sale went up by 23% over the last 5-year average. The number of people that you need to influence to close a deal. 23% up in 1 year over a 5-year average. Up to, on average, 5.8 people involved in a purchasing decision. Not quite matching that, the number of salespeople involved in a complex B2B sale is up to 4.1 people per sale. That's only up 7 points over a 5-year average. So we're not keeping up. There are more of them than there are of us in trying to keep up with how complex the buying process is and how many people there are involved in a buying process. Is this your experience? People are cross-functional. More people are involved in different ways of making this decision this time. And those increasing numbers of buyers are expecting more value from you sooner in the selling process than ever before. They're not waiting until late in the selling process to expect you to deliver your value. They're expecting you to be and embody your value earlier in the selling process. And 60% of buyers are demanding that they understand the ROI of the solution that you're going to deliver, and that's up 50% over a 5-year average in 1 year. And all of that laying on top of a ramp that says at the same time, more of those customers are choosing to buy from channel partners rather than buy from your direct sales force. So that welcome mat, it's a little confusing out there because customers are having different buying patterns than they've ever had before. It's not a big deal. It's just the reality of what's going on out there. And as sellers, we need to think about how we react to what customers are doing. Because us deciding that we're going to keep doing the same thing, you listened to Dan this morning, first thing out of the chute, if we keep doing the same thing that we were doing, it's not going to work. So the buying dynamics are changing. At the same time, inside our own business, if there's any of us that don't believe that the growth expectations on us as people are escalating, we're probably not looking ourselves closely in the mirror every morning. For most of us, growth through acquisition has really peaked. And many of that circumstance, reality of that, has come about because the acquisitions that we've done, the integrations that we've tried to do, have really not realized the expectations that were put in place when the acquisitions were done. And so those who funded the acquisitions are a little tiresome towards the next one until we get the ROI out of the acquisitions that have already been done. So growth through acquisition in a lot of companies, a lot of industries has at least peaked, if not stalled. And there are a lot of businesses that right now just don't have the insert your circumstance here as to what leverage you would use to continue to acquire. The market condition is not there, and if the one thing you might have sitting on the sidelines at the moment is cash, people are not putting cash into the market for acquisitions right now. Now, I'm not trying to paint doom and gloom here. There's answers to these problems. And I realize I may not be the third in a series of motivational speakers. But is this a sense of reality? Is this, when you wake up and go to work, these are circumstances that we face? And the reality is organic growth. Actually organically growing a company is required. It's not optional. And we have a problem in that most CEOs, presidents, and COOs have never organically grown a company. And my apologies to any CEO, COO, or CFO that's in the room that has done that. My hat's off to you if you have. But most have not, because in today's world, our CEOs, our CFOs, and our COOs have not come from a background of sales. They used to. They now come from capital markets, from finance, or from operations. They've never organically grown a company. So we've got to do something to help that circumstance, or what will happen will continue to happen, which is an 18-month sales cycle for sales executives that says if I'm not organically growing my company, there must be something wrong with my sales leader and I need to change my sales leader. And there's an 18-month sales cycle around the lifespan of a sales leader sitting in their chair. So we need to do something about that. Are we okay with this? Sitting still isn't an option. So we've got some choices. We can add some more direct sales resources. How many of you, as you go into 2016, raise a hand, expect to get more budget to add more direct sales heads? Maybe 20% of the room. You can just, for the other 80% of you, you can just give the team that you've got more quota. How many of you think that will work to drive productivity? No hands. You can pray for magic from marketing. There are all kinds of applications out there, great sources of leads. The connection between sales and marketing has never been better. Marketing is going to make this work. That's going to organically grow your company. You can recruit more partners. Recruit better partners. It's an option. You can shift your incentive plans and give your partners more incentives. Or you can just physically take some accounts and move them over to the channel so that you get more focus by your direct team on the right accounts and move some accounts over to the channel. Problem with all three of those: when was the last time that you recruited more partners, gave the partners more incentive, or moved some more accounts to the channel, and it sped things up? It takes time to develop a channel. Partners aren't under your direct command and control. You don't have the way to manage them in the same way that you have to manage a direct sales force. So where does that leave you? Stuck between a rock and a hard place. So, hopefully I'm painting a little bit of a business case for change. I mean, it's not gloom and doom. Because anytime you say to a sales leader, growth is not an option, that's the business we're in. We're in the growth business. That's what we signed up for. We signed up for the most accountable job on the planet. We're the one profession on the planet where our numbers show up every day, and that's what we get paid on. Nobody else in the world is as accountable as we are for our results. So when you say growth is not an option, or organic growth is not an option, we should be applauding and being grateful for that business condition. And the fact that it's hard just means that's why we're needed all that much more. But we have to have different ways to go about it. So I did something that I had no idea what I was getting into. And there are lots of people in this room who have preceded me, so I'm not smarter than I was 18 months ago. I'm not special. I'm not different. I'm just me. But I went through the process of writing a book called The Hybrid Sales Channel. And it's just shipped from the printer on Friday, and will be in McGraw-Hill's warehouse mid this week. It'll be from there to their channels as early as they get it into Amazon and CEO Reads and Barnes & Noble and all the channels that they go out through. But it's a book about how to solve this problem. And it's not a book, even though it has the word channel in it, it's not a book aimed at channel managers. It's not a book aimed at maximizing the indirect channel. It's a book aimed at the direct sales force. And it's about 4 basic elements. How to keep your customer at the front of that, because that's what we talked about at the beginning, right? The customer is changing the way they buy. So how do you keep your customer at the front of what you do and not focus on maximizing the cost structure of an indirect channel versus a direct channel, but focus on how customers want to buy rather than how you want to sell? How do you get down to a territory level and not how are we going to sell up here? Here's what we're going to do with the indirect, and here's what we're going to do with the direct. How do you get down and dirty at the customer level and decide how am I really going to apply my resources at a customer level? And how do I capitalize on the unique strengths of every resource I have available to me and get each resource using its unique strengths for what it does best and not duplicate any single effort of selling motion? Because that's where we all fall apart in our growth strategies. We get really confused because we don't have people doing what they do best, and everybody duplicates in one way or another what they do. So here's somebody that's got it figured out. How many of you have a hybrid car? Small number. Manufacturers have it figured out. We just aren't willing to pay the price for it. But a hybrid car is a really, really simple concept that has two completely different engines. One's electric and one's gas. The brakes come into play also. The gas engine is used when the gas engine is most optimized. The electric engine is used when the electric engine is most optimized. And the brakes are used to recharge the batteries as a source of power for the batteries to replenish the system. And when the gas engine is being used, it not only drives the wheels, but it also recharges the batteries. And each one of them are separate components, but they're codependent. They each have their unique strengths completely maximized. They don't try and compete with each other. They're completely maximized. They work together to accomplish the results. And they completely eliminate any duplication of effort. It's a pure system of a hybrid that is exactly how sales can work. We just have to do a few things a little bit differently than what our heritage has taught us how to do. First off, we have to start with the customer in mind, because we get all upside down when we start with our company in mind. That means we have to start thinking from the outside in, and we have to think about how does the customer want to buy, not how do we want to sell. And we have to think about our strategy with growth in mind, not with cost in mind, because most of the time when we actually sit down to build our plan for the beginning of the year, we're building our plan based on what's our plan going to cost us, not based on how much can we use it to grow. And we build an indirect channel because it's efficient, not because we can use it to maximize certain strengths to augment our direct channel and bring them together. We build them so that we can separate them. And that's not effective when it comes to growth. And we need to get down to a level of transparency at a territory level that's not some big white space mapping and market planning at a company level. We need to be able to get down to a territory and say, in this territory for these customers, what are we going to do for them to make this territory grow? And be completely open and transparent between our direct teams and our indirect resources that could affect that territory, and have a plan that works and that's joint and that's maximized and isn't duplicated, and not play at the company level anymore. And last thing we need to do is we need to eliminate seagull behavior. You know what seagull behavior is? Raise your hand if you know what seagull behavior is. You must have young children. How many of you have seen Finding Nemo more than once? What's the seagull say? Mine. 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 Anybody ever say that inside your company when it comes to sales? My customer? Does that ever get in the way of anything? Imagine you tell the direct team that they're going to collaborate with the partner team. It's my customer. No, I'm sorry, it's my customer. Remember what happened to the seagulls? They were both chasing after, there were all 100 of them or so, chasing after two fish that were brave enough to jump into the bill of a pelican. Pelicans eat fish. They were brave enough to jump in the bill of a pelican in Sydney Harbor and fly away from the 100 seagulls. They flew away from the 100 seagulls, and the pelican was smart enough to tip its wings on the side and fly between the mast and the sail. And what happened to the seagulls? and they're caught in the sale, and their bills were all saying mine, and the customer got away. We've got to eliminate seagull behavior in order to get to a hybrid method of working with customers, because the customers are going to buy how they want to buy, whether you just say the customer is mine or not. Declaring the customer is yours is an irrelevant, antiquated concept. It means nothing to the customer. It means a lot to your sales rep. Great. See how that works for you when you go out to talk to the customer, when you declare that they're yours. They're going to introduce you to the partner that they've been working with for 3 years, that they would rather do business with than you, because you're the third sales rep that your company has introduced to them in the same 3 years. So simplified, this kind of a process is back of the napkin kind of stuff. Pete, I'm going to give you a $7 million number this year. But at the simplest level, I'm only going to ask you to chase $5 million of that number. Okay? You made $5 million last year in your territory. I'm going to ask you to make the same $5 million, but I'm going to give you a $7 million number. And I'm going to ask you to work with me as your boss to identify the partner sales reps that can affect your territory, whether it's an industry territory, a large account territory, a geographic territory, whatever kind of territory you got. Let's look around and let's find the partners that we can line up that can help augment your skills, not duplicate them, to make the other $2 million. Now, over the course of a few beers, we're probably going to draw that napkin out and make it look a lot more complicated, because there's a number of ways that we need to take a look at your territory to talk about how we're going to select those partners and how we're going to develop the unique strengths and what we're going to do. But we can make it pretty simple down to 5 kind of simple questions. We need to ask ourselves how the customers in that territory are buying now. And we need to go through some analysis on that so we understand, because we don't need to plan that territory out until we know how the customers are buying today. And we also need to know what partners are already selling into that territory today. Because whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not, there are partners selling in there even if we don't have visibility in there. And we need to take a look at our products, because not all products are really suitable for Pete to sell. Because we've got some that are at the very front end of the innovation curve, where our customers expect Pete, as a representative of the company, to be at the front end of the innovation curve, because Michael, we need your expertise. But there's some stuff that you're selling that's at the top of the curve and on its way down that is almost commoditized, that we don't expect Pete to be front end on. And there are all kinds of partners that can wrap other sorts of stuff around those products and services and whatnot. And we need to really understand where your products are and where you're best suited and where others can help you out and can make that other $2 million. And we need to understand, when a customer makes a purchase, what's the whole solution they're buying that suits their need, not just what they buy from us. And where do they go get that stuff from anyway? And how does that fit how they buy compared to how we want to sell? And only then can we go and make this mapping to align the direct and the indirect coverage down at a territory level to make this kind of thing work. And to make sure there's no duplication of resources, and to grow a lot faster than the way we're doing this right now, which is, Pete, here's your $7 million. I know you did $5 million last year. Good luck. Let me know if you need any help. And this may not be the list for your company. It's not really relevant. There's a list of things on the sales motion that you've got in your sales motion. And it's not important which ones you decide are the things in a given territory or things for a given customer that you may want to assign over to the direct salesperson, or the things that you may take over to the partner side. What's important is on the sides, that you go down and you do this sort of analysis for each account. It might be at an opportunity level, because at an opportunity level, it might change because of relationships, because of who you're selling to and who's representing who on the opportunity. The partner and the direct salesperson might have different relationships, and you might need to change the mix, and you might need to change the matrix as to who's doing what. It could be based on the solution set. It could be based on the individual buying influence and who's best to cover who because of where they come from. It could be because of an industry relationship. It could be because of a certain piece of expertise. It could be a geographic segment and where someone's located. This is why you can't do it at a company level. You've got to take it down to the territory rep and to the sales rep level. And this is dirty, roll up your sleeves stuff. But you don't grow by just drawing pictures on a whiteboard, just like Dan doesn't go run the longest race across the longest distance that no American's ever completed by saying he's going to do it. You got to go do the work if you're going to get this kind of growth, because it's hard work. Sitting over by Alice is Bill Leahy. He lives just outside of Philadelphia. Bill was my first sales manager in life. I asked him to come join us. I moved at IBM many years ago from being a systems engineer to be a sales rep. And Bill had seen lots of systems engineers come to his office saying that they wanted to be sales reps because they thought they'd make a lot more money. And all they really wanted to do was take the money but not do the work. And they didn't understand how hard our job is. After 6 months on quota, I hadn't sold a thing. Not a dime. I hadn't a single order. And I was in a remote office in Rochester, Minnesota. Bill was up in Minneapolis, and he drove down to see me. And here's exactly how the conversation went, almost verbatim. I brought out everything I had done, all the seminars I had held, all of the prospecting calls I had made, all the presentations I had made, went through my review of 6 months' worth of activity, and Bill looked at me in the eye and said, "Rich, that's really great. I appreciate that, and I appreciate all the work you've been doing, but I just have one question. Do you want to get paid for activities, or do you want to get paid for results? Because activities are going to pay your base salary for another 90 days. That's what this is about. If we want to get paid for results, then we've got to do the hard work that it takes. Because in the next 6 months, I ended up the year 175% of full year plan. Because I had done the right stuff. And Bill knew I had done the right stuff. He wasn't there to fire me after 6 months. But he wanted to make sure that I was focused on the results. And we need to get to the results because growth isn't optional. So where do you go from here? I'm a little bit of a blatant shill, I apologize. Read the book. But this kind of stuff, as you can tell, it's not sort of do-it-yourself stuff. You don't pick up a book and read it and say, okay, I got it. There's a business case for this kind of change. It's a different business case in every one of your companies. Not all of you have the same mix of direct and indirect sales. Some of you don't have a direct sales force at all. Some of you don't have an indirect sales force at all. This discussion doesn't apply equally to everyone, but there's a business case for change. You can't go down this path unless you've got some leadership alignment. Because without the leadership alignment, top to bottom inside your company, you're not going to have the vision on we've got to focus on how the customer buys and not how we sell. You've got to have your first line managers ready. Because the first line managers are critical to making this kind of change and making the change stick. And you've got to embed the concepts with your people, and then you've got to go embed the concepts with your partners, because your partners have never heard you talk like this. I absolutely guarantee you they have never heard you talk like this. Because then it's going to take you some hard work. You've been a very silent, occasionally chuckling audience. I hope that's a sign that you've taken the message to heart. This is very serious stuff, and I appreciate your time.